And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
Al writes in, listening from the Port of Oakland. My baby girl Shang liked things radical and lawless, so let's hear from her, guys.
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
You know, given the number of requests that we get from the Port of Oakland to play the Shang Drops, I think if she were to run for office again, the Port of Oakland could quite possibly be her best performing precinct.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, let's say somehow she makes some deal and all the charges against her get dropped because now they're going to go after Bonta, and she runs for office, and it's between Shangy and Barbara Lee. I'm picking Shang 100 out of 100 times.
You and me both.
Oakland Bees!
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He was a candidate for the United States Senate here in the state of California in the last cycle. He is also available on X at @EricEarly_CA. Eric Early, welcome.
Great being with you, John.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. And before we get to California, you're an accomplished attorney, so I want to pick your brain about this real fast. And that, of course, is the verdict over in the P. Diddy trial, where the jury came back with a verdict that basically acquitted him on all of the serious charges and convicted him on some of the minor charges. P. Diddy and his team certainly took the result as a massive victory for their side. His supporters outside the courthouse in New York were celebrating by spraying one another with baby oil after the verdict was read. And I have a theory on this, and I'm curious to get your take on it. I think in recent years we have seen the Justice Department overcharge people and really go after people in punitive ways, where if a jury or individual jurors look at what the United States government is doing, in this particular case, it was Jim Comey's daughter who was the lead attorney in the case, and they say to themselves, now, wait a minute, maybe they did something, but they didn't do this, and you're overcharging them because it's like you're playing a game of poker with your buddies, and you're trying to bluff, and you're trying to win the game, and you're not looking for justice, and that's not what we're interested in, and that's not what prosecutors are supposed to do. And if that's not what you're doing, we're going to punish you, and we're going to punish you by coming back with a not guilty verdict. I believe a certain amount of that was at play in this trial, and the abuses that we've seen from the federal government overcharging people and politically motivated prosecutions are now resulting in juries starting to push back. Your thoughts?
Well, John, I agree with you. I didn't follow this whole thing closely, but I, was reading the daily reports and such. And I must say, I'm not shocked that the serious charges, the human trafficking charges, that he was not found guilty of those. And those were where the prosecutor went hog wild, overcharging. From every report that was coming out throughout the trial, yes, it was salacious and the sexual stuff sounded over the top, but the ladies that had apparently brought these charges, they kept going back for more, whether they liked it or not. They kept going back for more, and a jury sitting there saying to themselves, "Listen, they voluntarily kept going for this," and there was just no evidence, even from what I was hearing from afar, of any kind of human trafficking. And so that was the most serious set of charges that was brought. And unfortunately for the prosecution, because I'm no fan of this Diddy, he's a nightmare, frankly, what he did to those so many of those people. But this prosecution does appear to have gone way too far, and that would fall in with what you were just describing.
Let's come back to California for a second, because the federal government is also now going after both the state of California and the city of Los Angeles for their sanctuary state, sanctuary city policies. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is going nuts over this, as is the council. Gavin Newsom, of course, has been all over social media, all over television, going after President Trump and the federal government for filing this lawsuit. And one of the criticisms that they throw out is, we thought you were just going to go after the bad guys. We thought you were just going to go after the prisoners. We thought you were just going to go after the convicted criminals. And now you're casting a much wider net than what you promised. Well, Eric, if that's what they want, isn't the way to deliver that to repeal the sanctuary state, sanctuary city policies so that the jails and the prisons will cooperate with the federal government when the federal government wants to take one of these bad dudes and send them back to whatever country it is that they came from? But it's Newsom and company that are choosing not to participate in that, and the federal government, if they want to enforce the law, has no other choice than doing what they're doing.
100%. And, the other side, this gaslighting Newsom and this Karen Bass, the Marxist, they're masters, along with 90% of the media, in confusing the public. But, yes, the sanctuary state and sanctuary city laws protect illegal aliens who are also criminals, committed many times vicious crimes when they got here. And so the state and local law enforcement, because of these sanctuary laws, are prevented from handing over these violent criminals to ICE. And so how does that then create what is now going on? It creates it because ICE has no choice but to search far and wide, expending far more resources than they'd have to, for these illegal alien criminals, because they are being hidden effectively by Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and the rest of their sanctuary state laws. If we did not have the sanctuary state laws, this broad, huge net that ICE has had to cast to go and find these criminals wouldn't exist. They'd go right after the illegal alien criminals, and so many of these others who have been here illegally but not committed crimes since they've been here wouldn't even be looked at, much less pulled in. But, Tom Homan was saying this from the beginning. Listen, just allow us to have the criminals. Stop blocking us from having the illegal alien criminals. And but if you don't, if you keep protecting them, then we're going to sweep up way more people than we would otherwise normally sweep up, because they're going to be around where so many of these others are. So Newsom won't admit it, of course, because he's a lying sack. Karen Bass is just a disaster. She won't admit it. The whole far left state won't admit it. But their fight to keep these sanctuary laws in place is largely leading to what they're now, complaining about.
What do you think they're going to do? Because they have attorneys who are working for them. They know the new makeup of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They know the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court, should this end up there. If this gets taken to court and it gets appealed all the way up to the top, I think we all know what the result is going to be. If you're Newsom, if you're Bass, wouldn't you try to work out some sort of compromise right now when you have standing at the negotiating table? Because if you take this to court and you lose, you have nothing.
Well, listen, I'm not Newsom. I'm not Bass, as you know, and it's hard to put your brain into the heads of lunatics. But unfortunately, what you're suggesting is somewhat a rational, logical solution, but these are not rational, logical people. Everything is looked through a political lens with those people, and I believe that they believe that they will get more political support from voters by fighting this all the way to the bitter end. And if and when they do lose at the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court level, I do believe they will lose on this sanctuary stuff, then they'll just come up with another, supercharged false argument to make their supporters happy. So, I think it'd be very interesting, frankly, if Trump would come out and say, listen, Gavin, listen, all you sanctuary cities in the country, frankly, if you do away with your sanctuary policies and just turn over the criminals that you have taken in, and let state and local law enforcement work with ICE to take these criminals and let ICE do what they have to do with them, then in exchange, we won't be focusing on those who have been here illegally but not committing crimes since they got here for many years. And the only ones we'll focus on will be the ones that came in through the Biden administration for the last 4 years, as well as all of these hardened criminals. If you, on the other side, Newsom, et cetera, will do away with your sanctuary state protections of the criminals. I'd love to see something like that offered by Trump. And, I think we already know what the answer would be. They would say, heck no, we're not going to do it. We're going to fight these sanctuary policies and keep them in place as far as we can. But that would also be, I think, a very good politically, it would give Trump even more support than he already has.
Well, Newsom clearly believes that he's benefiting from this standoff with Donald Trump. You look at his poll numbers in the Democratic primary for president, and he's now polling at number 2, right behind Kamala Harris. As long as he thinks he's benefiting from conflict, I don't see him changing his tune.
I agree with you. He's not going to change. Listen, Newsom is a talented politician. Nobody is going to say otherwise. But the problem is he's a nightmare. As you know, you talk about it every day of the week, John. His policies have put California on its knees. They've destroyed California. I talked a lot about that in this Red State article I published last week called Big Daddy Takes Newsom to the Woodshed. And it was all about how Newsom has destroyed this state, policy after policy after policy, and how, thankfully, Trump came in with the with National Guard and the Marines, only, by the way, to protect federal facilities and federal law enforcement. They weren't crawling around all over the streets like, of course, the far left and the Newsoms of the world made the country believe. But Trump took Newsom to the woodshed and actually gave Newsom a public spanking, and Newsom needs more of that. So Newsom's going to keep fighting it, but I think as time goes on, it's going to be beneficial to the more and more beneficial to the MAGA Republicans, of which I'm a proud MAGA Republican. And ultimately, if Newsom manages to run for election in a couple of years, I firmly believe he's going to lose.
We're speaking with Eric Early, who you can follow on X at @EricEarly_CA. Eric, you have been a longtime critic of California's Attorney General Rob Bonta. You warned the people of California that he would be a disaster when he was a candidate for office, and certainly that has turned out to be true. You talked to people in Oakland. We mentioned that the mayor of Oakland, Sheng Tao, is under federal indictment right now. She's facing federal charges for corruption along with some others up there, in part because of her connection with the Dong family, who's also being charged with federal crimes. The Dong family were the political benefactors of Rob Bonta before Sheng was introduced to them, and they started funding her campaigns. You talk to people in Oakland, and they all say the same thing, including Sheng Tao, by the way, that she was not the target of this investigation, that the target is some unnamed person that's not Sheng Tao, but while investigating some unnamed person, they came across all of these alleged crimes that Sheng Tao and others had committed. We're now seeing a lot of very bizarre behavior coming out of the California Department of Justice, including an opinion saying that fantasy sports wagering is illegal. That is a decision that is being challenged by that industry, and no one really can understand why, of all the things going on in California right now, fantasy sports is something that Rob Bonta is zeroing in on, until you look at where he gets his money, which is primarily coming from the Indian casinos, who regard fantasy sports as being a threat to their business, particularly if sports wagering becomes legal in California, and that is expected to be on the ballot coming up next cycle. Do you think Rob Bonta is going to survive as Attorney General in California, or do you see storm clouds on the horizon for him?
Well, I've run against Rob Bonta before, and I almost ended up in the general election against him a couple of years ago. There's storm clouds all around Rob Bonta. Frankly, I firmly believe that if there is one state office that a Republican could take, we all hope that a Republican takes the governor's race, but I believe that the AG's office is the most vulnerable. Rob Bonta is corrupt as the day is long. You were just referring to some of that corruption. He's longtime buddies with that guy, I think his name is Dong, that you were just talking about, that led to the demise and indictment of the Oakland mayor. And, Bonta comes out of Oakland, out of that cesspool up there. His wife, who is a state assemblywoman, Mia Bonta, is also completely corrupt. And they are just, Bonta is a communist, for crying out loud. He's a flat-out communist. Before Newsom plucked him from obscurity to make him Attorney General to replace the last lackey that Newsom had made Attorney General, Becerra, when Becerra went off to the Biden administration, Bonta was an obscure assemblyman from the Oakland area. The first thing he ever tried to do, the first bill he ever tried to get passed, this was Bonta, was a bill that would allow communists to, members of the American Communist Party, to work in the state legislature. And, who does that? Who does that, especially as your first bill? And the only thing that stopped that was that the Vietnamese American community, who had escaped from communist brutality in Vietnam, put huge pressure on Bonta to pull that bill. But that's who Rob Bonta is. If Rob Bonta loves boys and men in women's and girls sports. He loves it. He will do anything he can, and he's filed lawsuits to stop it, to prevent parents from protecting their daughters in the face of this stuff. It goes on and on. He loves the indoctrination that's going on, the sexualized indoctrination that's going on in the schools. When some of the great counties in the state came up, supervisors, boards of supervisors elected by the people, to order teachers to tell parents if their minor children in elementary school were talking about changing their sex, Bonta filed a lawsuit to prevent teachers, to keep teachers silent from telling parents what's going on with their kids. This Bonta is a far left, sick and twisted guy. He's corrupt as the day is long. He has no respect whatsoever for law and order, and frankly, his biggest strengths are he's another one of these kind of smooth talking guys, makes it look like he's on top of everything, and he's got huge support from, among others, the Indian tribes that he's now bringing that lawsuit on, but technically on behalf of, even though he's not saying he's bringing it on behalf of. He's got huge support from the socialist Marxist leaders of the California Public Employees Unions, and so yes, he's very vulnerable.
Eric Early. You can follow him on X at EricEarly_CA and find him online at ericearly.com. Eric, thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thanks again for having me, John.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've passed the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. You listen to those, right? Everybody does. All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show on Apple Podcasts or the iHeartRadio app or Spotify. Just type in that name, The John Phillips Show, and it should pop up. You hit subscribe. You download all the episodes. You could also do a Gascon.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Every episode of the show gets automatically posted to YouTube, so search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube. You can like and subscribe and share with your friends. You could download the app that we have for our stations, like the KABC app or the KSFO app. There's so many ways to listen to this show outside of the way that you're listening right now.
And we're now on the radio in Fresno.
Every Saturday from 2 to 3, you can hear the Fix California Hour with John Phillips and Randy Wang on KMJ in Fresno, covering the Central Valley. That's AM 580 and 105.9 FM in Fresno, Bakersfield, most of the Central Valley. That's a massive station. You can stream it live if you're outside of that listening area every Saturday from 2 to 3 Pacific at KMJNow.com.
And right now it's time to open up the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
And speaking of the Central Valley, Randy, that's where we're going right now.
A longtime bakery in Stockton is surrounded by prostitution and crime, and that has their loyal customers freaking out that this place might go out of business.
There goes the neighborhood.
For more, here is CBS Sacramento.
On New Tonight, an uptick in crime turning up the heat for a longtime local bakery.
Get it? Because they bake bread.
I see.
They just have to do that.
Can't pass up the opportunity, huh?
There's somewhere in the job description of newsroom editors, the people that write the headlines, that they have to put puns in their stories.
Well, how about this? Did the hookers outside the bakery have muffin tops?
There we go.
Customers worried they'll lose their Stockton staple. The owner
Oh, alliteration, too. Good job.
worried they'll lose their Stockton staple. The owner now trying to calm concerns.
Yeah, kind of a desperate plea. They've been in the same spot for 107 years. Your reporter covering San Joaquin.
That's an old-ass bakery.
Yeah, no kidding. Who started it? The 49ers making sourdough?
Your reporter covering San Joaquin County, Esteban Reynoso, is on this tonight. He's live in studio with more. So, Esteban, is the owner planning on packing up?
Well, guys, nothing is completely off the table when it comes to Geneva Bakery, but also nothing is set in stone. The priority right now is to keep those green doors open at the same location, but to find a way to make the area around it safer.
But we want people to relax right now.
Longtime owner and baker Tim Canavari runs one of the oldest stores in Stockton, Geneva Bakery. It's been in this same location on Sierra Nevada Street with the same recipe and mission for 107 years.
Same sourdough starter, probably.
That would be my guess.
I've been looking and been contacted from other people to move, maybe even set up a second location. Maybe that's time. So
People try the bread. Maybe they're in real estate and they say, hey, your bread is great, but that neighborhood has gone to hell. Have you ever thought of moving somewhere safer?
Like Oakland?
Not like Oakland.
But we'll see.
Canavari says crime here has gotten so bad, his bakery has even taken bullets.
That's not raisin bread.
Prostitution comes the drugs and the guns.
I didn't realize that's how the food chain works. You start with the prostitution, and that brings the drugs, and that brings the guns.
Well, the pimps bring the guns and the canes.
Prostitution comes the drugs and the guns, and we've seen that.
That's a lot to fight through just to get some muffins.
I wonder if the prostitutes are right out in front of the bakery, if the pimps are standing there in their shadow, and they're just nibbling on a scone.
Canavari has pleaded with city leaders and Stockton police to address the crime around the bakery.
Right now, we just want this area to get better.
Canavari and his...
Shouldn't be too controversial. Bakery doesn't want hookers in front.
Well, maybe after their shift ends, it's the Keebler elves that are hiring the hookers.
Canavari and his team took to social media to calm customer concerns, saying right now they're not planning on moving.
You know, it's not a good sign when you have to post on social media, right now we're not thinking of closing.
No, we're willing to put up with the crime and the prostitution and the guns.
Right now. But right now can be now very quickly.
Some of our customers went into panic mode, coming in, saying, please don't move, thinking that they're coming in to get their last loaf of bread or their last sandwich. And
by the way, it should be a ringing endorsement for how good the bread is here. People are dodging bullets to get it.
Hey, if you have a bakery in your town that's a good bakery, you're willing to put up with almost anything for that bread.
Their last sandwich, and that's not what our main focus is.
One way Stockton Police is trying to address the crime in this area is by installing one of these, an observation truck with cameras on every angle. Tim says that it's already helped during the daytime, and neighbors say they've seen the difference too.
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
There's a lot of... I knew that word.
Yeah, you don't have to be bilingual to figure out who she was referring to.
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
Mucho prostitución.
Sí, señor.
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
There's a lot of...
Yeah, I think they could save money on the interpreter for this story.
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
There's a lot of prostitution, a lot of crimes.
I think I need this in my life. Let's just go ahead and save this to the good old drops folder. I think the drops folder is twice as big as it was last year, and that was twice as big as it was the year before. But this will be called Mucho Prostitución.
You going to share this one with Pio Lynn?
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
There's a lot of prostitution, a lot of crimes.
Well, the woman speaks the truth.
This truck that's in front, it helps a lot. I saw an arrest firsthand. 2 cars were racing, and at first the police lost them, but the cameras detected the cars.
Now, Stockton police say last month they led a prostitution-related crackdown in the area, resulting in 10 citations and...
Citations?
Which means they're back.
Well, this all goes back to Scott Wiener's bill that essentially decriminalized every aspect of prostitution.
Yeah. I think what you have to do if you're the bakery, trying to fix the problem is a losing cause. You just need to move them. Just move them away from the bakery. Send them to the donut shop. Just send them over there.
Leaving the spot truck in the area longer, it's these efforts that Canavari, the owner, says will keep Geneva Bakery where it stands.
So there you go, a 100-year-old bakery plagued by mucho prostitución.
Porque hay mucha prostitución.
There's a lot of prostitution, a lot of crimes.
I hope they're listening. What I just gave them is the answer to their problems. Move them away from the bakery and put a maple bar in their hands. And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, with this one, we're moving across the Central Valley from Stockton to Bakersfield.
You know, a lot of people like the idea of vigilante justice. Maybe they grew up reading Batman comics, seeing the Batman movies. Maybe in a more contemporary time, they've been watching videos of Black Biden.
Not today. Not on Black Biden's watch.
But in Bakersfield, a group of vigilantes took their justice just a little too far when they pretended to be a child on Snapchat to entrap somebody into thinking they were meeting a child, and then they beat the guy up and robbed him.
Wait, which Lincoln Project guy did they nab?
For more on the Bakersfield Vigilantes Gone Rogue, here's ABC 23 in Bakersfield.
3 young adults are now being investigated after what police suspect was a vigilante operation turned violent.
I think when Black Biden does his thing down in Long Beach, he usually tells law enforcement what's going on.
He also wears a wig.
According to a search warrant, the 3 are accused of assaulting a man after posing online as a 14-year-old girl. I'm Veronica Morley, your senior reporter. Investigators are now warning against the consequences of these kinds of civilian operations and how they can do...
By the way, when they do this, what picture are they using?
Oh, either they just take a random one off the internet, or I'm sure it's AI.
If the girl's got 6 fingers, it's not real, people.
of these kinds of civilian operations and how they can do more harm than good.
When police are doing an investigation, we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes that the public's not aware of.
Child predator stings are not uncommon, but in this case, the operation wasn't law enforcement. Bakersfield Police Detective Bijan Garib
Didn't they ever notice when they watched Chris Hansen back in the day that as soon as the person was free to go, there was law enforcement out there to take them into custody?
Maybe what they did was just take an old picture of Dana Plato from Different Strokes.
Bakersfield Police Detective Bijan Garib investigates internet crimes against children and handles these kinds of cases.
When someone conducts a vigilante operation, there's certain things that they don't know about that they could be jeopardizing the investigation.
On June 26th, Kern County Sheriff investigators were called out to a home on Anger Street, according to the...
Wait, Anger Street?
I think I know a few people who've lived there before. In fact, they may physically be in a different place, but they never move mentally.
On June 26th, Kern County Sheriff investigators were called out to a home on Anger Street, according to the warrant. And when they arrived, 21-year-old Michael Mercure told them he'd used Snapchat to pose as a 14-year-old girl and message a man to meet up. When investigators entered the home, they found two others, 21-year-old Jaden Day and 18-year-old Mackenzie Munoz.
These are some young vigilantes.
Yeah, what do? They sit around and watch reruns of To Catch a Predator and they decide they want to be the next Chris Hansen?
The man, who had not been charged with a crime, was found inside handcuffed, by one hand, physically assaulted and robbed.
Well, they just did the combo platter, didn't they? We're going to teach you a lesson by taking all of your credit cards and buying as many video games as we can.
I think that the vigilante operations are happening because people are becoming more aware of these type of predators in society. It's a dangerous thing that they're doing.
Garib said while he
No. That's not what happened here. I think they did this because they figured if they caught a guy who was doing something that was illegal, that they could rob him and they could take whatever it is that they wanted, and the guy would have no recourse because he would have to admit that he was there to meet a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, he's not going to call the cops on this incident.
No, this is a case where there's just no honor among thieves.
Garib said while he can understand why some might try these kinds of operations, unlike law enforcement, most civilians don't have training to handle dangerous scenarios, nor the understanding of what might be needed to not only catch a predator, but ultimately gain a conviction.
Yeah, there is all that.
Yeah, what do you think that's going to look like in front of the judge? Well, this guy was doing horrible things. I posed as a 14-year-old girl, and he came over looking for sexual favors. So then we tied him up and beat him up and stole all his money.
I think we have a mistrial.
While social media often plays a role in these kinds of vigilante operations, with groups online recording themselves or even live streaming.
For clout, it could be for fame, it could be for clicks.
See, this is the thing. Black Biden, that was like a year and a half ago.
Not today. Not on Black Biden's watch.
There's a lot of imitators out there who think they can make a living on social media doing vigilante work, but these guys took it just a little too far.
You ever watch Live PD?
Oh, yeah.
I think these guys are competitors.
Garib points to the legal ramifications.
Wiretapping, eavesdropping violations, they can actually induce the person unknowingly to, make statements or take actions that can be considered entrapment. It can escalate pretty quick.
We reached out to KCSO in regards to the investigation, but have not heard back as of news time. Again, Garib implores the public to notify law enforcement if they ever suspect a crime is in progress. In Bakersfield, I'm Veronica Morley, your senior reporter.
You gotta, if you're gonna do this, which, all right, good luck to you. You've got to let the police know what you're doing, and you have to be as lawful as possible, or don't get into the vigilante business because you're not Batman and you don't have a Batmobile to escape.
Well, and if the goal of what you're doing is to commit a crime yourself, I think you really need to think it through.
Maybe these guys were watching The Wire and they're like, we just want to be Omar. He only robs drug dealers. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, that was the concept of Dexter. Dexter was the serial killer who only killed other serial killers. But he always had to stay one step ahead of the law. If they caught him, he would have gone to prison. So if you're catching these guys and you're robbing them, and then you think that the cops are going to celebrate you, you might be in for a surprise.
Boy, our popular culture is just full of vigilantism.
You know what the moral of this story is? There's a lot of perverts out there, and there's a lot of people with too much free time. If you want to do something about this, go out and get a degree in criminal justice and become a cop or become a district attorney or become a crime scene investigator or something professional, something legit. But just luring people in and robbing them, I don't know if you're really teaching anyone a lesson. All right, we've got one more hour coming up on The John Phillips Show.